This RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by Brett Young. Change the game with BY7204LL, Brett Young's newest canola hybrid with Liberty Link technology.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Monday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, a big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. We appreciate it. Continue to tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, anybody interested in the world of agriculture. It is great to expand the community. The audience continues to get bigger and bigger with every week. Okay. Today, it's Agronomic Monday on the program. Looking forward to it. We got Peter W.P. Johnson with us. Pete and I got a lot to chat about. Of course, I think he's out seeding wheat today, if I do have it all straight. We're going to talk a little bit about some farm safety issues, what we're seeing in this corn crop in Ontario drying down pretty fast. We're also going to talk a little bit about fall fertilization. Lots to chat about today with Pete. We've got a interview, I should say, with Dr. Ken Fry. He is a guest on a recent Canola School episode that's brought to you by BSF Canada and Vigor Hybrid Canola. Amber Bell of RealAgriculture had a chance to catch up with Dr. Fry, talking about beneficials in that canola field. And then we're going to finish up with something really cool. A look back 40 years on soybean production and look at weed control. Things like, when we discovered the weed-free period and just a whole bunch of stuff. We'll be talking to Brian Wooley of Syngenta. Fun video that Bern Tobin shot out in a soybean field with Brian Wooley, a fan of this show, and I know a long-time listener and viewer, so it's pretty cool to do that kind of thing with Brian. So you can definitely check that out today on today's program. Lots to chat about. We also want your feedback, okay? So shaney@realagriculture.com is my email. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You can also take the opportunity to call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Want to hit on a big news item, even though we're talking agronomics today. Big news item is the fact that, we got an end to the strike at the Port of Vancouver. Okay. Over 600 workers in the 6 main grain export terminals in Vancouver are returning to work as of this past Saturday. So this is, I think this deal came together Friday night. Their 4-day strike, which nearly halted grain shipments through Western Canada's largest port, came to an end on Friday as the Grain Workers Union Local 333 agreed to a tentative 4-year agreement with the Vancouver Terminal Elevators Association. Pretty significant 4-year term. That's encouraging. That's good to see. That limits the disruption that we're going to see in this area going forward. So workers will be returning to work at the Alliance Grain, Cargill, Cascadia, G3, Pacific, and Richardson International terminals in Vancouver as early as 7 a.m. on this past Saturday. So they are back to work now. The new deal will run through December 31st of 2027, replacing the previous agreement that expired at the end of December 2023. This is encouraging and great news because what we were hearing at the back half of last week was it was not going well. They were a long ways apart. There's a lot of discouragement. So to see these two sides come together is fantastic news. The two sides worked with the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services on direction from Labor Minister Stephen McKinnon on Wednesday and Thursday, but it appeared talks had broken down on Friday morning, like I just said, as the lead federal mediator had stepped back from the negotiations to report back to the Labor Minister on the stalemate. The situation changed quickly later in the day as both sides were able to come to a deal with assistance from federal mediators Friday evening. Perfect. This is great news. I hope the workers got what they wanted. And the elevators, the terminals are happy with the deal and we can move on. Obviously, there's still some challenges when it comes to the Port of Montreal and the port strike that's going to happen in the U.S., which is very significant. So that's the big news here today. Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to get going with Peter W.P. Johnson right after this.
Your co-op grow team are your local experts because we live here too. Our agronomic specialists stay up to date with the latest research and technology to help support your entire farm operation. Talk to our team for advice tailored to your farm's needs. We have recommendations to help you optimize your crop yield and quality while enhancing the health of your land. Co-op. We're all growing together. Here for your farm. Here for your family. Learn more at coop.crs/farm.
It's now time for a product spotlight with New Seed. Sean Walker, field sales manager for Montana. Tell us about the key benefits to the grower in North Dakota and Montana for the program this year.
We've got some really attractive premiums this year with our contract. Actually, a lot more flexibility in pricing. Canola markets aren't that great, but by being able to do the omega-3 program, one, we've got those premiums, and two, they're going to be able to honestly market this crop for, if they've signed a contract today, almost 2 years, which is really nice. Out here in Montana and North Dakota, we are somewhat in the middle of nowhere. Our contract is a freight on board contract, so picked up on farm, which is really nice. Still have an active God with this contract, and these guys, they get to choose when they want to deliver as well. So some really positive pieces that when a grower is trying to decide, how can I make this work for my farm? The omega-3 program really thinks about how we can bring this specialty market to these growers.
That website is omega3canola.com. Great opportunity for growers in Montana and North Dakota. And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Agronomic Monday. Joining us is Peter Pete Johnson, the agronomist for RealAgriculture. Pete, how are we doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Sean. We are drilling wheat. If everything goes well, maybe we'll finish today, if not tomorrow, hoping to beat the rain. And anytime I am planting wheat, even though it's cloudy, it's not a sunny day, you know how I love sunshine, but I'm drilling wheat, I'm a happy camper.
Well, that is good. Hey, Pete, you can protect your anhydrous ammonia and bottom line even if temperatures hit 15 degrees or below. That's not too late to apply agronomically effective, non-corrosive Centuro nitrogen stabilizer. You can learn more by going to centuro.ca. And of course, there's a lot of producers thinking about anhydrous ammonia this time of the year for sure. Pete, any thoughts on anhydrous ammonia and kind of things to be aware of and what to do, not to do, and just keep in top of mind at this time of the year?
Yeah, so, I mean, for sure, one of the things that you have to do is get good seal, Sean. And then as well, you really want soil temperatures to be low enough. You really want them below 5 Celsius. And then adding a stabilizer just really gives you that next level of assurance that you're still going to have that nitrogen available for next year's crop. The other thing that growers should definitely be doing is pulling a soil sample to know what residual nitrogen they have in Western Canada. That, of course, does not work in Eastern Canada. But, and last but not least, Sean, on anhydrous, like we almost have zero anhydrous in Ontario anymore, even though it's the cheapest nitrogen source. And it's all about safety and liability. So for goodness sakes, if guys are putting anhydrous down, they need to be safe. They need to wear the protective gear. They need to make sure that the lines are good, like change the lines. A line that is 10 years old needs to be changed because if a line goes when you are standing beside that tank, and it has happened, that is nasty, nasty, nasty.
Yeah. So I remember last year, I think we had a conversation about this. You know, I've got a lot of acres to cover. I got to push the window on that cold temperature. But then with that, if you don't wait to some of those colder temperatures, you're not getting the effectiveness that you would if it was otherwise, right?
Well, if it turns to nitrate, right? And that's what happens with the cold temperatures. It stops that transformation so that we don't get subject to any loss. If we get it transformed to nitrate and then we get some warm or some moisture so that it can hydrolyze or it can denitrify, right? Like it's really, it's actually denitrification is what we're worried about, or nitrification and going off into the atmosphere. So that's the big concern. Yeah.
What are you seeing out in the field there when it comes to corn moisture levels? I've been hearing that we're dropping fast.
I can't believe it, Sean. There are growers on Twitter with corn at 20% moisture on the 23rd of September. So it's the 30th now. I don't know. That corn could well be 18%, 17% moisture, we are going to be at harvest here very, very quickly. And the weather that we've had, for the most part, we've had warm temperatures. As soon as you get those warm temperatures, and very, very different weather in Ontario. So if we go kind of south of the 401, we get into the London area, the whole weekend was sort of wet and catchy. When I go north to where my brother lives up near Paisley, they've had almost no rain. I was there on Sunday. It was just an absolute gorgeous day. Meanwhile, I drove through mist and rain in my own part of the world. When I was leaving home, there was almost nothing got done where I live at Lucan and south of Lucan. And yet up there, so when you get those really sunny, low humidity, warm temperature days in September, that corn can lose moisture unbelievably fast, maybe even 0.5% of moisture per day. That's the extreme end, but that's what we've been seeing this month. And it's almost like we're in the U.S. Midwest. It's like we're in Iowa, where they take corn out of the field at 16% moisture and complain because it's not 15.5 and they want it at dry moisture. I'm astounded, but we're 300 heat units ahead of last year. And so that sort of tells you why we're there. But that's only for the corn that got planted late April, beginning of May. That's starting counting those heat units in the 1st of May. For my own corn, kind of planted the 18th of May. I'm not 300 ahead because we got a nice bit of heat in May. So I'm maybe 200 or 160 ahead, something like that. So planting date makes a huge difference, and area of the province, huge difference as well.
And what I've been hearing from farmers on the Farmer Rapid Fire, that, feeling pretty good about their yield opportunity.
Yeah, I really hope it comes through, Shaun. The silage corn yields have been solid. I wouldn't say there's any records out there, but they've been solid. When I get down into the tar spot area, the way that corn has just shut down from tar spot, I hope yields are there. I really do. I know most of that corn got sprayed, but if you have a corn hybrid that really tends to make a lot of yield by kernel weight, I'm afraid those hybrids may not come to the table just because we lost so much photosynthetic capacity in the last half of grain fill. Tar spot it's been ugly this year for us, Shaun. I've never seen it develop so rapidly and so significantly. Just a tremendous issue. So we'll wait and see. I hope they're right, but I'm a little conservative at this point.
Yeah, and what I've been hearing from people is, because we're just learning about tar spot for the most, we're still in information accumulation phase with this disease because it is relatively new to us. What I've been hearing from some people is be careful. Just because that field looks like it's been the most impacted by tar spot doesn't mean it's necessarily going to have the lowest yield. That there's be careful judging the book by its cover. I've had a few emails about that last week. Does that make sense to you?
Well, absolutely, because it depends on as I drive around, late planted corn doesn't look nearly as impacted yet, which is really interesting. It's as if as the corn gets closer to maturity, any natural tolerance that it has tends to disappear. And so cornfields can drop incredibly rapidly. I've been astounded how fast the leaves can disappear. But if the corn is mostly mature by the time that happens, it may have almost no impact. Meanwhile, if you kept the crop green, but that particular hybrid doesn't have good yield potential, or you didn't plant it right, or it's had other issues coming through the growing season, I absolutely agree. You can't necessarily say because it wiped out early, it's low yield. But if you listen to any of the real high yield growers, they want it green at black layer there's darn little corn in my part of the world that was green at black layer. So I worry it wasn't pounded in that photo state into the kernel as at the same rate I wanted it to.
Pete, right now, obviously, you're out drilling wheat. We're going to be talking about emergence quite a bit here coming up as this crop gets out of the ground. I don't care if it's winter wheat or spring wheat in Western Canada, cereals in general, the importance of emergence and the difference that there can be from variety to variety. And first of all, how do I know, besides just growing those, different varieties over the years, but how do I find out, or how do I get information on which ones launch out of the ground and which ones don't? Because it has an impact at the end of the day on yield, correct?
So Shaun, you got to be really careful.
Okay.
Because you're right. Well, you're right. If I take the same genetics and I get two different seed lots, and one has better cold germination, better vigor than the other, man, almost for sure the seed lot with higher vigor is going to have higher yield because it'll launch out of the ground quicker. It'll just come faster. But when I look at genetics, because Bobby actually sent me this, he sent me a variety comparison he did, and one variety is out of the ground and looks, you can row it, it's there. The other variety, you can't even see it yet. And we see this, I planted my own variety plot about a little over a week ago today, and there's one variety in particular in both replications, 2 rep tests. It is well behind in emergence. But emergence doesn't always relate necessarily to yield. That could be a very high yield variety, but it just is a little bit slower out of the ground, needs a little bit more heat to get out of the ground. So you don't necessarily always relate emergence to yield. Now, there is a bit of a relationship there because we always talk about planting date and that impact on yield. It's actually emergence date that is more important than planting date, because that's when the plant really starts to count development. So if it emerges 2 days later, then that's likely 2 bushels less yield. But on the other hand, if that particular genetic package has 8 bushel higher yield potential genetically, the fact it loses 2 because it's slower out of the ground it'll be 6 bushel ahead instead of maybe the 8 bushels that the genetics say. So you're right that it makes a difference, but you got to be careful because, in our performance trials, you can walk through and say, this one's slow, this one's fast. And then you come back when you look at yield, and that it isn't always the way yield plays out.
So important things, seed test, right? That's
yes.
Yeah.
Sure. Like, don't even question it. Just do it. If you don't know if you have emergence, you are really behind the 8 ball. So yes, seed test. And if you really want to pick the best seed, then you will clean it hard. There's a little bit of work that says on cereals, bigger seed tends to have a little bit more push out of the ground than smaller seeds. Soybeans are the other way, interestingly enough. But a little bit bigger seed, and then do the vigor test, right? The cold germ test or the vigor test. And if you can, use the seed with the highest vigor. That's the seed that's going to give you the best yield.
Well, all this talk about seed testing, I should mention Wednesday's show we brought to you by SGS. And they're celebrating a pretty significant anniversary at their Guelph lab. So that's going to be a pretty cool show on Wednesday, brought to you by SGS. Okay, we're going to take a break. Sorry, what's that?
I'll listen in so that I know what they're celebrating. You haven't said yet, so I'll find out what.
I think it's the 40th anniversary, Pete. Big deal.
Oh, good for them. Absolutely.
Big deal.
Yeah, huge.
Hey, the best answer for agronomically effective dual nitrogen protection is Super U Premium Fertilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how this ready-to-use granular fertilizer protects nitrogen and boosts efficiency, visit kochag.ca. Okay, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio with Peter Pete Johnson and myself, Shaun Haney, right after this.
Doing more in the field is possible when you add the proven power of Anvil Nitrogen Stabilizer, the next generation dual-active urease inhibitor from Koch Agronomic Services. Driven by Duramide technology, Anvil gives growers the advantages of low application rate and long-lasting protection, all thanks to Duramide, a Koch-patented active ingredient. Defend against volatilization, boost efficiency, accomplish more. Learn all about the dual-active power of Anvil by visiting anvil.ca. That's ANVOL.ca.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from realagriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule no matter what fall throws at you. And right now you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. This segment's brought to you by the Pioneer brand canola with, key piece here, Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here. Optimum Gly from Pioneer Seeds Canada. We're talking to Pete Johnson here on this Monday. Pete, safety around harvest time is critical. Farm safety is important year round, but we get a little bit more attention put to it during harvest time. You had yourself a bit of a close call, I hear, and there probably was a solution to it.
Absolutely, and this is one we haven't talked about, Shaun, and it was to the point where there almost wasn't a weak seat to talk to Shaun on today's Agronomy Monday. Coming home in the dark from a family gathering yesterday up north, and I'm going down a Perth County side road, paved, almost no shoulder, meeting a tractor trailer. And so the tractor trailer's lights are in my eyes. I can see, but it's harder to pass the tractor trailer. And I just get past the tractor trailer, and here is a crossroads and a tractor and two gravity wagons crossing the crossroad. I had to stand on the brakes as hard as I could. And like that obviously the driver of the tractor, he had lights on the back of his wagons, but there was nothing that I could see on the side. And he clearly didn't see me, or like he should not have crossed in front of me. But he was crossing behind the tractor trailer. Maybe the tractor trailer blocked my headlights to him. But I think the solution there, Shaun, if you could put some reflective tape on the side of your wagon. Most growers put it on the back. I actually put it on the side of my wagons as well, because if I'm combining at night and I'm trying to find where that wagon is, that reflective tape, because the wagon, might be parked parallel to where I'm combining, the light hits that, you say, there's the wagon. It's easy to find. But from a safety standpoint, get that reflective tape on the side of your wagons, because then my headlights would have seen it. I would have known something was coming. Sheila was with me, and she just said, "Oh my God, I'm so thankful you were driving, because I don't know if I would have seen that in time." And so just a simple solution, little bit of reflective tape, put it on the side of your wagons. It can help maybe save somebody's life.
Well, similar vein. It was going back about a week ago, driving in the countryside, and farmer pops out of the driveway on a quad. It's getting close to sundown and is wearing all black.
Yeah.
Not helping ourselves.
High vis. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't think of it, if you're just bombing around the yard and stuff like that. But if you're crossing where there's traffic, gravel road or not, like, come on. Good.
Yeah,
Those are unforced errors that could be fatal.
Yes, be safe.
Well, we want to talk about slugs. Let's hit on that. What do you got for us on slugs?
So it's been a slug year in Ontario. For goodness sakes, I heard today that there is some wheat that was broadcast into standing soybeans, and it's now being replanted. And so what happens is that the slugs, as that wheat seed on the soil surface germinates, they pop the germ end out. The kernel looks like you actually think that you got sold seed with no germ, because the kernel looks intact until you pick it up and look where the germ end was. And so I know lots of moisture through much of Ontario this year. If you have broadcast wheat, I'm not a big fan, but if you do have it, get out there and look. Pretty good chance that you might have some issues. Also, some no-till canola. Tomorrow, October 1st, Art Shaftsma in Kent County having a day at his canola field. He seeded canola no-till, and the slugs have just wiped him out in parts of the field. And we actually don't recommend no-till winter canola because of the slugs can do so much damage. I'm a no-till guy. Yeah, slugs can wipe you out, man. So once in a blue moon, when slugs are the issue, you need to look at some other source. And by the way, check out your winter canola. We have winter canola. A client of mine has winter canola in Bruce County. I drove past it yesterday. I didn't have to walk in. Where it germinated when he planted it the last week of August, she's a foot tall, and I've never seen such nice canola, but at least 20% of the field has no canola at all because it's been so dry there. The canola seed in the ground hasn't even germinated yet.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about seeding wheat. Any winter crop, just like in the spring, stand evaluations. Get out and do that. Make that a part of your process. You probably have a little bit more time in the fall to do it than you maybe do in the spring, because there's a whole bunch of growing season that kind of gets in the way. In the fall, before you pack up for winter, do that stand evaluation, do it properly, get that information so you have that info for you to make better decisions heading into spring even, right, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. It's scout. Doesn't matter whether it's spring or fall, Shaun. I think the fall is just as important because that's when we plant winter wheat, and I want it in early, so you got to scout to make sure that you have that stand.
Yep. And last week we talked about fall weed control and the importance of that, which is a big time of fall activity. So if you missed that conversation, go back and listen to last week's Agronomic Monday show. Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. You can find out more by going to genesisfertilizers.com. Pete, have yourself a great week, okay?
You as well, Shaun. Thanks so much. And whatever you do, be safe.
Absolutely. Good message. Hey, everybody, make sure you check out Wheat Pete's Word. New episode drops every single Wednesday. Pete does a great job answering your agronomic questions. Coming up next on RealAg Radio, we're going to hear from Dr. Ken Fry. We're going to talk about canola pests, friend versus foe, and which pests are on which side of that equation. We'll be right back right after this.
If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products. Each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's Koch ag.ca.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
Join the Prairie Oak Growers Association for their annual general meeting on December 4th at the Fairmont Banff Springs. Visit poga.ca poga.ca. That's poga.ca for more information and to register. Oh, December, Banff Springs, decorated for Christmas. What a beautiful time of the year to be at the Banff Springs talking about oats. So poga.ca. Now on Real Ag Radio, what we're going to do is we're going to look at beneficials related to canola. And RealAgriculture's Amber Bell had a chance to check in with Dr. Ken Fry for a Canola School episode, which of course brought to you by BSF Canada and InVigor Hybrid Canola, talking about insects, friend versus foe.
Hi, I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture. I am here today with Dr. Ken Fry, and we're going to be doing a canola school. We're going to be talking about bugs. He's an entomologist from Olds College. So we're going to be talking about friend versus foe in the canola field. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, so there's bugs out here.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
and you know, it's always amazing. You go out there and you think, oh, my field is full of things. But the vast majority of them are actually not harmful. Huh. And a lot of people go, it's a question of, well, my goodness, if it's a bug, it's got to be bad, right?
Right.
But what a lot of folks don't recognize is that 99.9% of the insects on this planet are actually doing a service. Mm-hmm. They're eating other insects. They're decomposing organic matter, so all those plant materials that fall down, especially in our zero tillage or minimum tillage regimes where you have a lot of debris on the ground, well, how does that turn back into soil or into nutrients, right? A lot of insects have a lot to do with that, a lot of arthropods, so the mites inclusive of that. Then there's pollination services. I mean, that's what most people think about in terms of beneficial.
Of course, you see the bees around, right?
Friends, yeah. But there's parasitoids. These are insects that lay their eggs inside of or on top of other insects, and then the immature stages that hatch devour that host. And so, yeah, it's kind of grim. There's predators where instead of eating you from the inside out, they munch on you from the outside in. So ground beetles and rove beetles and things like that. There's all kinds of beneficials in that regard, but I think the unsung heroes really are the ones that are doing the decomposition.
Right.
So, you know, we always talk about healthy soil. So is it nutrient-rich soil? Does it have good cation exchange capacity? Is the electroconductivity right? Does it have the right moisture content? But also, it's a living, breathing ecosystem with fungi and bacteria and all kinds of things, and that includes insects as well. So if you want something going after your cutworms or your wireworms or your root maggots, you want those predators in the soil like rove beetles and ground beetles going after those things.
Right.
So diamondback moth, Bertha armyworm, even lygus bugs, they all have parasitoids. So these are little tiny wasps. There's some flies that'll actually lay their eggs on insects too. And then there's what we call the tourists or adventives. Mm-hmm. For a formal word, but they're basically, hey, it's hot, I'm going to chill under this leaf. And so you'll get butterflies flying in, you'll get moths flying in the late evening, you'll have all kinds of flies and all kinds of things flying in and just chilling.
Right.
Look at all the flowering resources. That's canola. That has nectar, it has pollen, and that's a big food resource. Mm-hmm. So we took a sweep through here, and what we found were a whole bunch of thrips. And normally you'd think thrips, oh my goodness, those small little things that punch a hole in the cell and drink all the cell contents. Well, there's a thrips that comes into canola fields in particular called Thrips vulgatissimus. It just eats pollen. And so it's actually helping to pollinate the canola. Now, there's another one called Thrips tabaci, or the onion thrips. It feeds on the flower buds before they open. Now, that's a bad one, bad news one. But so when you do take a sweep, you actually have to take out your hand lens, figure out friends
actually
from
see what's
foe.
out there. And how would you identify what is a friend versus a foe? I mean, we know like the Bertha armyworm, that type of thing, the big ones that everyone talks about. But if you're taking your sweep net out and you're looking at what you're seeing there, how do you identify them?
Well, number one is you can do things like this. Thank goodness for a nerd pack. You can pick up, so simple, handy little notebooks. This one is Common Natural Enemies of Crop and Garden Pests. And so you just carry this with you. And so you have brown lacewings, you have syrphids, which are hoverflies. They look like bees, right? They mimic bees and wasps, but the larvae eat aphids. And so canola can get aphids if it's wet enough, right? Not the Russian wheat aphid or English grain aphid, but they get other kinds of aphids on them that will do damage to the flower heads. You can get so we have crabbed beetles, we have damsel bugs, minute pirate bugs, assassin bugs. There's like all kinds
and all
of
these
things.
are in canola?
And all of these are in canola.
Wow.
Which is fascinating.
Can you find hairy rove beetles in canola?
Absolutely.
Oh, they're really cute.
They are super
They're so
duper.
fast, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the rove beetles are interesting because like ground beetles have, they're usually blackish in color and they're lumbering along and you can see their big mandibles. So when you asked about, how can I tell friend from foe, think about what is it they're doing. Now, typically if something's feeding, like think of a cow.
Right.
Where's its food? Down below
On
its
the ground.
face.
Yeah.
So where's its face? Its head faces downward.
Mm-hmm.
So if you typically see an insect with its head facing downward, that's probably a herbivore because the food is down below its feet.
Right.
Whereas predators, their food is in front of them. I'm going to chase you. So my face faces forward. So like ground beetles, their mandibles are sticking out like this. Rove beetles, their mandibles are sticking out like that. Flea beetles, their heads are facing downward.
Right.
Right? Lygus bugs, their mouth parts are tucked in. So I'm going to use this as a tool. Their mouth parts are tucked in here and I can just go like this and go stabby, stabby. Whereas there are some predatory bugs, even like stink bugs. Everybody thinks stink bugs, what good are they? But there are some stink bugs like Podisis. It's called the spined soldier bug, and its mouth parts come from more like from the forehead, and so its mouth parts can go out and go stabby, stabby like that. So where is their mouth facing? Might give you a hint. Number 2, if it has, here's the front end, here's the back end, and if it's got a stabby thing coming out the back end, chances are, not a stinger,
parasitic
like a bee, it's parasitic, so it has an ovipositor, and so this is their genitalia has been converted, well, actually it's the baseline form of it is to lay eggs. It's only been modified in bees and wasps and things for stinging secondarily. So its most primitive form is to lay eggs. Now these have been modified slightly to jab into its host. So if you see something sticking out at the end, but not all parasitoids actually have their genitalia sticking out. Some of them have them tucked into the abdomen, and only when they're going to lay an egg does it come out. But yeah, if there's something coming out the rear end, chances are it's a parasitoid. Another thing to think about is like the damsel bug, the minute pirate bug. These are true bugs, and what we mean by true bug is they have piercing, sucking mouth parts. So every bug is an insect, but not every insect is a bug.
Right.
So they have piercing, sucking mouth parts, and these things, they need to grapple with their prey. So if they've got big guns up front, I don't have to wrestle a piece of leaf to eat it, right?
Right.
Herbivores, the plants are passive. I can have spindly little legs. So if you've got big guns up front and spindly legs behind, it means I need to wrestle with something. That's probably a predator.
Okay.
So assassin bugs, the minute pirate bugs. Cool. So that's another thing is if I'm sweeping, then I'm only getting sort of part of the story because a lot of the predators, like the rove beetles, they're down in the
underneath,
soil.
right?
So if you're wondering, okay, what do I have that's going on, is to use a pitfall trap. And so you put a little propylene glycol because that will be very slow to evaporate. And when the insects fall into it, they will drown very easily because it doesn't have much surface tension. Because insects, even ones that are going in soil, they have little hairs or setae that are what are called hydrophobic, that shed water. So they can actually walk on water literally or try and crawl out of the trap if you just use water. You put a few drops of soap in, then they'll drown because that surface layer is gone, surface tension is gone. Propylene glycol, they'll drown in there and they're preserved nicely. If you're using soap and water, you have to go out there every couple of days, but propylene glycol you can leave for a week or two.
Wow.
But you sink that yogurt cup or margarine tub into the soil and make sure that it's a slope down in, so it slopes down in so that the insect isn't having to climb a hill because it'll just go around.
Right.
So it slopes down in. And then I can track what spiders are there. So you got wolf spiders, you got all kinds of spiders, ground spiders that are good predators too.
And you'd find all those in canola.
And you find everything in canola. Absolutely. Wow. So it's interesting that you're putting something into a field, whichever crop it is on a rotation. There's a lot of these beneficials are already there.
Right.
Right? They're pre-existing denizens, as it were. Now, you might get some immigration in and reproduction to increase the populations so that, okay, if it was in canola this year, you're going to have more of those animals that are going after canola pests this year. And then if you were to go to wheat or some other rotation, then they're going to go, okay, well, I got to leave this field because there's nothing
and go to somewhere else.
And they'll go somewhere else. So, but there are some generalist predators, like a lot of the ground beetles, a lot of the meat eaters and not the parasitoids. So that the external eaters, those tend to be more generalist. And so you just have a resident population regardless of the crop.
That's incredible. So many, I'd never actually thought about the fact that the way it faces, which makes a lot of sense, would be tell you a lot about, whether it's a predator.
So, just being able to observe, and this is what's nice about biology is you don't always have to know right down to the species. You don't always have to know, every last minutia about it. There are some general rules that I can make. I can make informed decisions, good risk management decisions with, just a certain amount of information. More information is better, but you don't have to exhaust yourself trying to get everything. So I don't have to memorize every ground beetle species. I don't have to memorize every rove beetle species. It's enough to know ground beetle, okay, because there are some ground beetles that are seed feeders.
Okay.
And in canola, if you get a lot of pod shattering and there's a lot of seed deposited in your field, they'll, just overwhelm you by the millions. Right. But it's not causing damage. They're just, there's lots of...
Because they're not climbing up the plant to get to it. They're just eating what's on the ground. Right.
Yeah, so they're just eating what's on the ground. So, that's reducing volunteer crops for the next season. But, for the most part, if you see a carabid or a ground beetle, this is going to be a good predator. And carabids tend to be a little bit more elongate. They look kind of beefy. Their mouth parts are forward facing and they got the big mandibles. So then I know that's going to leave a mark, right? That's going to be something that's going to be chasing down some other animal. And that's just a simple deduction or conclusion you can reach from a simple glance, or you're looking through your hand lens. But definitely there's online resources about who's friend and foe. Go have a look, like RealAgriculture and others. You can have a look at just basically general beneficial insects. And it isn't just pollinators. There's so much more to it.
Well, that's amazing. For an amateur bug nerd like I am, that's a lot of great information. And I'm going to be paying a lot more attention the next time I go out into a canola field.
The more you look, the more you learn, the better your life is. Basically.
It really is. Yep. It's true. Well, thank you so much. And that was Dr. Ken Fry on Real Agriculture.
Start prepping for next year's emergence with fall tillage solutions from Väderstad, including the Väderstad Carrier high-speed disc, the top-down cultivator, the Will-Rich chisel plows and disc grippers, and heavy-duty Wischek discs. Equipment for all field conditions, soil types, and tillage practices. Find the right tool for your farm at Väderstad.com. We come back on RealAg Radio. We do a bit of a look back in time, the history of weed control relative to the soybean crop. Bern Tobin of Real Agriculture will talk to Brian Wooley when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
The best answer for agronomically effective dual nitrogen protection? It's Super U Premium Fertilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how this ready-to-use granular fertilizer protects nitrogen and boosts efficiency, make sure you visit kochag.ca. Well, now we're going to do something kind of cool, I think. Brian Wooley, who works for Syngenta, has worked in all types of crops and has had a fabulous career. And he likes to do these look backs. And so Bern Tobin from our Real Agriculture team caught up with Brian, and they talked about, going back decades, the history of weed control in the soybean crop. Things have changed. Some things have actually come all the way back around again. And it's been an interesting journey. Here's our conversation.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Hey, thanks, Bern. It's a real honor, actually, thinking about doing this with you today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, I appreciate it. Now, You know, we can't let you retire without having you share some thoughts on 40 years working in weed control. You got started in the business in 1984 with Elanco. Tell us a little bit about the journey. It all started in Port Dover, Ontario, right?
It did start in, we say Dover. I come from a small farm, still farming there today. It's small by today's standards for sure, right? And we had all kinds of livestock, but back then everything was pigweed, because we fed it all to the pigs. That's kind of the size of our operation. And then basically it was 1984 when I started working for Elanco, when I really discovered there was other weeds other than pigweed, lamb's quarters and ragweed and nightshade and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I did basically 20 years of research. Then in 04, we moved over into the sales and service side of things, which used all that knowledge maybe I gained the first 20 years and took it to growers and retailers.
When it comes to weed control, Brian, you know, we've seen a lot of developments over the decades. You know, what are some of the most important developments in your mind?
Yeah, I think there's some major cornerstone blockbuster products that were developed over time, and they didn't come all at once, of course. So you think back to 2,4-D. That, you know, it's big today. It was really novel back in the 50s or 60s. In the 70s, atrazine, right? And then glyphosate was also discovered in the 70s, but probably really didn't come into the foreplay until the 80s. I think Pursuit in soybeans was a game changer for a little bit, and dicamba, of course. So there's probably others, but those are the 4 or 5 to me stick out. Wow, it would be pretty tough to farm today, grain production, agriculture without those 4, 5, 6 products.
Now let's travel back to the University of Guelph, the 1980s. Let's head back on.
Yes,
you
sir.
were Dr. Clarence Swanton's first graduate student. Clarence, of course, is the researcher who developed the concept of the critical weed-free period. Brian, how significant was that development?
Well, at the time, I guess I probably didn't really recognize the fact. Clarence took a chance on me, another local Norfolk County boy, that I could do some grad study work for Clarence, and so we figured out the critical period in white beans. And then a few years after that, there was another grad student did the same work in corn. You know, and we still refer to that today, the critical period of weed interference. You know, my project was, starting with a pre-emergent herbicide, how long you needed weed control before you didn't need it and didn't get a significant yield loss, and conversely, how early did I need to come in with a post-emergent product, not getting the yield loss from that early weed competition, and then carry on weed-free to the season end. So we figured that out, and again, it's the cornerstone of weed control in any crop today, is controlling weeds during a critical period that can really be hard on yield.
Let's talk about how weed control has changed over the years, Brian. I know, prior to the 1980s, weeds really cost farmers a lot of money.
Well, we simply didn't have the tools, right? Like, forget about Roundup Ready crops, and quackgrass was a major weed in Ontario. Probably every farmer had quackgrass, and it was very difficult to control. Inter-row cultivation or scuffling was, that's how I cut my teeth, cultivating corn and then tobacco. There just wasn't a lot of herbicide options, and my dad was probably one of the last to actually use a herbicide on the farm at some point in the 70s. I remember it. It was like an epiphany, and Brian didn't have to scuffle too much corn after that, other than putting nitrogen on. So, and it's evolved since then. When you think about all the herbicides that came into play, and then the whole, we'll say, Roundup Ready or genetically modified technology has really changed the way we farm, for sure.
Let's have a look at the 1980s and the 90s. You mentioned it, right? We had so much chemistry come into the market. It really was a dynamic marketplace.
For certain. Like when I was in research back then, we were working on 2 or 3 products. It didn't matter what company I was working for. We had 2 or 3 what turned out to be major herbicides. We were, developing the label and doing the work to get things registered, and it was crazy, a number of tools, and there was a number of companies were doing that, right? And new modes of action too, right? That you could put together, and all of a sudden you could kill quack grass, and you could do things pre-emergently and post-emergently, and fields look a lot cleaner in Ontario or around the world because of that, right? So,
yeah. And things changed in the 90s. Now let's talk about the arrival of Roundup-ready crops.
Yeah.
Later in that decade, weed control got easier and cheaper. How did it change the game?
Well, I was with Monsanto at the time, and the whole Roundup Ready canola was the first crop being looked at, but it was off in the horizon, and I got nervous, so I moved on, right? But you think about we had Roundup Ready canola, Roundup Ready soybeans, and soon thereafter Roundup Ready corn, coupled with glyphosate. Keep saying Roundup, but it was cost effective, right? It wasn't $25 a liter. It was $8, $9, $10, $11 a liter, and wow, you could spray it on a crop once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and not have to worry about any weeds.
Now, Brian, coming out of Roundup-ready crops, glyphosate-resistant crops, we're now in an era of resistant weeds. From Canada fleabane, ragweed, water hemp. We're combining chemistries, modes of action. How challenging is it out there now?
Well, yeah, it's the crux of the whole thing, right? When Roundup Ready technology came out and the price of glyphosate, it made it really easy, right? It was cheap, it was effective, and then that word resistance came up. And I think all the companies, we kind of took a pause, right, before we realized, oh shoot, glyphosate isn't going to be the be-all and end-all for time, right? So I think along came some work by Syngenta and others, and again back to that critical period of weed interference. Maybe we can't wait till post-emergent, just doing that solely anyways, and got researchers and the companies looking, okay, maybe we can still fit this residual chemistry in and make it work.
You're retiring, but I know you'll be watching the industry closely. Tell me what you expect to see from a weed control perspective in the coming years. Where might we be 5-10 years from now, and what tools and practices may be in the toolkit?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little concerned, right? Because we're very quick to, as growers, to almost misuse chemistry. I think it's so important to use more than one effective mode of action on every weed in your field, right? We used to say you could get away with 85% weed control and get the yield you wanted. Because of resistance, we need to get really close to 100% weed control and not let things get off the rails. Canada fleabane was really the training ground, and I think we figured that out with the use of residual chemistry and good post chemistry. More and more of us are dealing with water hemp now. Definitely a bigger issue. Luckily, it doesn't move around a lot like fleabane. But the whole pigweed family, the amaranth family, is they're just huge seed producers, right? So we got to really try and stop those from going too far. And of course, I think the weed that really has potentially the biggest impact on production agriculture in North America is Palmer amaranth. We need to do everything we can to stop that weed from getting a foothold here, right? Because it's resistant already to so many modes of action, as is the water hemp, but Palmer amaranth is just, it comes resistant. Looking ahead, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, weed control is not going to get any easier. And I think it's going to be more complicated for every grower. Most important, two effective modes of action on every weed in the field. I hate to think it, but I talk to my interns about scuffling. They laugh, what the heck's that, right? Inter-row cultivating, like what we did in up to the 80s. And I think that when in a field like this, it's going to become a tool, right? Maybe not in a wheat field. And then looking ahead, I just saw a clip this morning on a news show, and it was in a broccoli field or something, showed a robot and using AI technology to take out weeds. That's coming. It's way far away before it works in a field like this to do it on a timely and quick enough and cost-effective manner for a regular grower like me to think about something like that, right? But In the meantime, we just need to be worried about resistance and think about crop rotation, herbicide rotation, multi-tools.
Hey, final question for you, and you've worked, with a lot of products, a lot of crops, a lot of farmers, and you've earned a lot of respect from those farmers and in the industry. What's been the secret of your success?
I don't know if it's a real secret. I try to live by the golden rule, so to speak, and treat my customers the way I like to be treated. I've been, and I don't hesitate to say I've been blessed. I've worked for a lot of great companies. They've given me amazing opportunities. And I think, amongst my colleagues, I say I got the best customers, whether it be retail or grower, and a lot of great customers. Some of them don't even buy anything, but and become friends, and just spend time with growers are awesome, right? And the more time you spend with them, you get to know them and what ticks. And I enjoy helping farmers grow the best crop. That's probably a Syngenta-ism, but I want to grow the best crop I can. And so I'm going to try to help my growers and retailers grow the best crop they possibly can.
Well, great stuff, Brian. I appreciate having you on Real Agriculture. And as I say, I know you're retiring, but will you be around? I'm sure we will see you down the road.
Excellent. You bet. Well, I'm a grower, so I'm a Real Ag subscriber. I'm always learning, and I look forward to learning in the future as well.
Pretty cool conversation there, Brian Wooley of Syngenta with Bern Tobin of Real Agriculture. Now, if you have any feedback on anything that you heard today, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode, brought to you by Brett Young. Check out their new BY7204LL canola with Pod Defender shatter tolerance and Defender rated club root protection. Talk to your local retailer today.